we're going to be bringing on Matthew Davenport. I know he's been listening to the show, so we need him to go over to his Facebook page. I sent him a link for the show. Go ahead, Matthew Davenport, and click that button.
I want to give a little shout out to Matt Wiseman in the chat room. Good evening and welcome to the chat and the show, sir.
Thank you so much for hanging out in the chat. Hope you like the new digs that we got going on here. We're trying to make your experience as a listener even more incredible than what it already is.
Really, Matt? What does Zombie say to the hooker? Keep the tip.
Oh, okay.
Oh
It's sex and zombies today. I don't know how I got lost in all of that.
Hashtag sexy zombie.
Right. Hashtag sex and zombies. I never thought that I would have a show where we would merge the two. It's all good, right there, Double D?
Oh, yeah.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hi, how are ya? How are ya?
Great, how are you doing?
Good. I don't even know. I lost a long time ago. You know, we're pretty highbrow, usually, with the show, and, you know, asking questions and stuff like that, but it got away from me today. I don't know how that happened. I'm imagining it's probably going to stay like that for the rest of the show, too. So we're going to properly introduce you to our staff, and then we're going to cut right into it with Matthew Davenport.
Awesome,
all right.
Awesome.
So we've got Scott Pearson. He's head of research and all things green for Zombiepalooza Radio.
Good evening, Matt.
Hey,
welcome
Scott.
to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah. And, of course, we got the only zombie on the planet that matters. That would be first chair co-host, Dead Dora William.
Howdy.
You're sounding a little bit more crunched than you usually do. And thank you. Appreciate that. All right. And, of course, we've got Crunchy E. Squirrel, who's just been bumped up to chief engineer of Zombiepalooza Radio. He's in the background somewhere, probably helping Double D fix whatever that is that's making him crunch.
We'll be back shortly.
All right.
Pleasure
Thank
to
you.
meet you, Crunchy.
Nice to meet you.
On the fly always. All right. Matthew Davenport. There goes Crunchy. It's a zoo. It is. We have you. You have some damned nice looking books over here.
Oh, thank you.
And I like
me. Covers everything.
You did all that?
Yeah, that's all me.
All right. So we have a number of books that we are going to talk to you about this evening. We also are very interested in why you decided to pick up one of these and some of this and start this process called writing. Go.
Okay. When I was a kid, I used to have some really weird dreams, no reason other than being a kid, and I told my mom about it, and she was a huge Stephen King fan at the time, and she just told me, hey, Stephen King, she thought, anyways, I don't know if he actually ever said this, but she said he writes down all of his dreams, and that's how he makes novels. So my first stories I ever wrote, when I was like 9, 10 years old, were about giant mosquitoes killing people. I mean, they were goofy things, but it was all horror right from the beginning.
Cool.
And then,
you know what? There are some big bugs out there. And,
right? Exactly. Something to be scared about.
Yeah.
So basically, I just started writing everything. I love making stories, and I'm a big fan of if you want something done, just do it. And so all throughout high school I wrote. I did a bunch of other stuff too, so that kind of pushed it off to the side. When I got to college, a lot of my friends liked some of the stories I wrote, so I started turning turning stories that had them in them. My best friend since kindergarten, I wrote a story, Adventures of Matt and Bob, which was kind of a Jay and Silent Bob thing, but about our lives and stories that we did, or supposedly. But a lot of those turned towards horror, too, because I've always had a huge fascination with Lovecraft. So a lot of the stories that I incorporated my friends into were either really sci-fi, which we had a couple Star Wars parodies I wrote, or really horror in the fashion of Lovecraft. So, and then I moved to Iowa, so I had an archaeology career that brought me all over the country, but I ended up in Iowa, and when I got here, I didn't really know too many people, so the writing kind of took off, and I met a bunch of people that go to NaNoWriMo, and that's how I published my first book, Random Stranger. I jumped right into NaNoWriMo. It took me 2 nanos to finish it, and the rest is history, as they say.
All right, you went into NaNoWriMo, so I want you to talk about a little bit what that is, what time of year that happens, what the process is for, what you need to do, and then we're going to go on to the next subject, NaNoWriMo.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you asked, because it happens right now. National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo, happens during the month of November. The goal, write 50,000 words in a month. That's 1,600 words a day-ish. And you're supposed to try to pump out a novel in a month. It has a huge community at nanowrimo.org, and every region has their own group that writes. I currently write in the Central Iowa region, which is a huge group, but everywhere has a NaNoWriMo group running. It's international, and there's all sorts of support. Probably the best thing about NaNoWriMo is if you don't have to write 50,000 words. You find the most value in the support. There's an entire forum and your groups. Everybody helps you just keep writing. You start to lose a little traction, you just go to a write-in, sit in with some people and write. It's fun.
Yes. It's a beautiful thing. And I think if we could get more people processed into this amazing thing that NaNoWriMo is, that we would have less bickering and more writing.
We'd have more creation, and that's
Right.
awesome.
Right, exactly. All right, so couple of cool things here. And if you're in also the chat room itself, you're going to have to mute that because I got an echo going on here. And all right, so as he's doing that, he's got a company. It's called Davenport Writes LLC, and what you do is you help promote and support writing communities through that company. Talk to me about Davenport Writes LLC.
So I started the writing and the getting published, self-published, in 2009 with Random Stranger, and it was a grind. I did the query letter thing. I tried to find agents. Honestly, it just didn't sing to me. So then after the archaeology career, I actually found fun archaeologist. So what I found was, as I was working at Barnes & Noble, was that this world of self-publishing was getting easier and something people could easily fall into. So I started grinding through that and figuring out all the ways I could do that, from everything from learning Photoshop and the open source GIMP to basically getting my book in every store possible. And after years and years of doing that, I started going to signings, not even just oh, I totally lost it right there. not even signings that I would actually sit in at and sign books at, but signings I just go to visit and find other authors like me. And what happened was, about last year, about a little over a year ago now, Larry Stumbo in Iowa, he's an author here, he put together the Iowa Author Festival, and it was about 30 authors all sitting around and doing a signing, and I showed up just to talk to everybody. And as I was hearing their struggles, it sounded like stuff I'd already worked through, or stuff that I knew other people who had already worked through. So I started talking to them about ways to get around it. By the end of a 20-minute chat, really, I mean, it was just a group of the other authors were all around, and I was talking to all of them. A lot of them said, Matt, why don't you just do this for us? Why don't you just do this for us? And I was like, better yet, what if I helped you do it for you? And so that's how Davenport Writes was born. Essentially, the idea of Davenport Writes is whatever an author needs, we'll help them find. So my website has freelance editors. If you're a freelance editor, I just throw you up on the website. Freelance cover artist, you're a freelance cover artist, I throw you up there. You want somebody to show you how to self-publish your book and get it into every store possible? I'll do that too. We just opened DW Radio, and we were 2 episodes into that. And DW Radio covers author interviews as well as tips on how to monitor your own books. And we don't just focus on self-publishing. We focus on anybody who needs anything if you're an author. So a good example is traditional authors, such as Sean, good old buddy Sean. He can't actually see his daily sales. So and after the Barnes & Noble thing, I have a sorted resume. But after the Barnes & Noble thing, I started business-to-business sales, selling technology. And so for about the last six or 7 years, I've been selling business-to-business sales. So I pay attention to marketing trends and how things sell. So when I saw that Sean and other authors, traditionally published authors, can't always see their day-to-day sales, I realized that's a problem. Because if you do some sort of marketing thing on a Sunday and you can't see how well that sold until a month or 3 months later, then that's no good to you. So I actually found sites like novelrank.com and a couple others to help them see their daily sales, because Amazon's tracker for sales is an open API. Anybody can see it. So it's basically that kind of thing. I help authors market, but I also help them get anything they need in the form of their sales and how to see their sales.
All right. Purely selfish here right now.
I love selfish.
Because I love what you're saying, and boy, I want to be a part of that and allow for people to also know that there's a platform for them to get out, like what you're doing right now, and help them kind of like hone their ability to be able to talk to an audience and answer questions that, you know, are not the regular average cookie cutter crap.
Yeah.
Okie dokie. All right. So moving along, you have a real cool adventure travel story in the works of H.P. Lovecraft. The story name is it Andrew Dorn at the Mountains of Madness?
So Andrew Dorn's a series. There's book 1, and there's book 2. There's also a short story that I kind of consider a prequel, The Early Adventures of Andrew Dorn. But yes, basically the archaeology thing comes into play again. I loved Indiana Jones growing up, so I decided, wouldn't it be better if Indiana Jones and H.P. Lovecraft met? So Andrew Dorn's kind of my Indiana Jones pulp guy. He does pulp adventures. Book 1 was written as a serial where he crosses into Nazi-controlled Germany, and he has to retrieve the Necronomicon. And that's the statement of Andrew Dorn. He meets a whole cadre of people, and each chapter has specifics from specific. It has events and adventures that are specific to H.P. Lovecraft's individual stories, and they even have play on titles. Like I think the 3rd chapter of the book is Shadow over Barcelona. So Shadow over Innsmouth is an H.P. Lovecraft book, so I turned that into a kind of Andrew Dorn adventure. That's chapter 3. And so you go on there, and in the theme of Zombiepalooza, chapter 5, I believe, is Geneva Reanimated. It's Nazi zombies versus Andrew Dorn for an entire chapter. It's possibly my favorite chapter in the whole book. But then, after that book, I wrote Andrew Dorn at the Mountains of Madness, which is a play on H.P. Lovecraft's At the Mountains of Madness, in which Andrew Dorn has to get to the mountains described by H.P. Lovecraft in the Antarctic that the Nazis are going to as well. They're both aware that there's an alien city down there and that there's potentially weapons. So Andrew Dorn wants to beat the Nazis there and stop them from getting weapons.
You want to know something cool?
Yes.
In the Antarctic, kid you not, there is a base underneath all that snow that where it's been melting, stuff's starting to come up, and people have seen, mapped out, that there is definitively something there.
It's probably this city, and we should definitely help freeze it back over.
I think it needs to be back over, right? You know,
Good
really.
idea.
Yes.
I'll bring my freezer, and we'll all meet down there.
I know, right? I don't want to know what that, whatever that was. It was covered up for a reason. Okay, so you have the trials of Obed March. I'm sorry.
Yep,
the trials
Obed March.
of yes, Obed March.
Another book by H.P. Lovecraft is The Shadow over Innsmouth, which I mentioned as chapter 3 there. But
Yes.
Trials of Obed March is actually written. There's the cover for the new cover I made. It's written based on one line by Zadok Allen, a character from Shadows over Innsmouth. One paragraph. Zadok Allen is the only person in all of Innsmouth that hasn't been converted into a monster. He's still, and it's basically because he's an alcoholic that everybody hates. But he mentions that Innsmouth used to be this shining beacon of hope. It used to be a prosperous port town, and Obed Marsh used to be great until he started trading with the natives. So I decided, well, that sounds like an awesome book. So I went through and I basically found all the history I could that was in that little snippet. Researched a lot about the islands that were supposedly where he found all this, and the area in New England where Innsmouth would be. Put this all together and wrote out a long timeline. It took me over a year. This was not a NaNoWriMo story. And then I sat down and I just typed it out. And essentially, you're following Obed Marsh, the beacon of the town. He leads the town because he leads all the ships. He supposedly had a dream, said down in the Polynesian Islands, we need to go there. So he decided to take his ships and start going there to trade, and he found that as long as he's willing to let the islanders teach him about their religion, they're willing to give him anything he wants, which is in the form of gold and food that washes on shore because of their religion. Things happen which lead to him needing to bring the islanders home, and there's the local Protestant religion is kind of against it, and at the same time it's prosperous for the town. So how does a man who loves his town and wants to help bring in better schools and provide for his family and his neighbors and provide jobs for his family and neighbors, how does he say no to such a lucrative offer?
Right.
And that's probably my truest horror novel I've got. It's definitely a dark tale into the corruption of a man in a town.
Talk to me about the one that has the timepiece on front of it. I can't read the title of it.
That's my short story, Sherlock Holmes in the Case of the Murderous Confidant. Basically, it's a short story that all the evidence is pointing towards Watson as being the criminal.
Well, haha, that's different. I like that.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
All right, so you've got, you do have one that is up in the front, but I want to wait a little bit for that. I want to go over to the statement of Andrew Doran.
Yep, and that was the first one I mentioned earlier. That's this one. Basically, Andrew Doran, he's been gone from Miskatonic University. That's where he graduated. He had an argument with them, with the staff. He knows that the book they have, the Necronomicon, is dangerous, and he wants to lock it up. And they say, no, it's something everybody should be able to see. So he sees the dangers, and he decides to just distance himself from the school, and he spends some time trying to learn more about that book without actually going near the school. Then Miskatonic loses the book. And there's only one person they can call. That's Andrew Doran, because he's the only one that knows as much as he does about it, and that's kind of what he does. So they call him in to go hunt down the book and go into Nazi Germany and get it back. Okay, that's my first book. Random Stranger is essentially, so there's, I have a whole spiel I give on that too. So Random Stranger is, everybody knows a Random Stranger. He's helped you with your groceries, he's helped you go shopping, he's helped you, or not go shopping, but help you fix your flat. He just helps you randomly somewhere. Everyone's met one, or met many. Well, it turns out they're all the same person. His name's Randy Stranger. His girlfriend's Karma. She's kind of a bitch. And his best friend's Lucky Bastard. And somebody's out to kill them all because they're these omnipotent beings almost. They embody our ideas. And the question is, how do you kill an idea? So they also have to figure out how an idea can be killed and then stop it from happening.
Love that. I told you. I like that. All right, we're moving along. You're touching the next one. I love this kind of story. It's called The Sons of Merlin.
Sons of Merlin is actually a very long story in the making. In 2002, I started college with my best friend Bob Reynolds. Bob Reynolds had been working on this idea of the great-grandkids of Merlin. He started piecing it together. I sat down with him. I started piecing it together with him, and then we just kind of forgot about it. 2009, 2010, I put out Random Stranger, and then right after that, Bob messaged me. He's like, hey, do you want to pick this back up? And I said, yes, I do. So we started working on it again. We took all of his notes, compiled them into a big journal of notes, and then we just sat down and cranked out this story. And I mean, we actually have enough for 2 sequels that we're currently in talks about.
I love that. All right, so it's Matthew Davenport and Robert Reynolds, The Sons of Merlin.
Oh, yeah.
We're going on to the next book that I like. It's kind of a play a bit from Random Stranger. It's called Stranger Books.
Stranger Books is the sequel to Random Stranger. In the first book, a kind of item of power is created as kind of like just a side quest, I guess you'd say. And in that book is all of the power of Random Stranger. So it can make random things happen if you're near it. And random is really a very broad term in the story. So I mean, a duck could just randomly come out of the wall. Things randomly happen. And so Randy has to basically find this book again because it got lost. It turns out there's a black market among these abstract ideas, and it got traded a couple times, and now someone's using it to wreak havoc on the world, and it's draining his power because you can only have one embodiment of a random or of an idea anywhere, and you learn that in the first book. So as this book gets used more and more, it's gaining power and he's losing power. So he has to find it and stop the book from being used before he fades.
All right, thank you for that. Okay, the next book is called Guard Dog.
Guard Dog's a short story I wrote back when I wrote the Sherlock Holmes one. It's kind of my urban fantasy. Guard Dog it follows a character, man, I can't even remember his name, it's been that long. But basically he's a PI, but he's also a werewolf, and his way of dealing with being a werewolf is he locks himself in a basement that is covered in Celtic runes. He gets hired for odd jobs, and that's a short story that follows him on an odd job where he has to save a girl who's magically inclined from being kidnapped and raised by people who would use her magic for bad.
I like that. All right, and the last one that you have to date, The Early Adventures of Andrew Doran.
And that's my prequel for Andrew Doran. I took a writing class just to kind of see what it was like, and they said, why don't you sit down and just pick one of your characters and do a background for them? And so I'd never actually written a background other than a couple years before Statement of Andrew Doran for Andrew Doran, so I wrote his whole childhood out, and I decided, well, that would make a great story, so I used that as the notes to build the horror story. Like, and the other Andrew Doran stories are adventure. This one's definitely horror. It's about a kid who discovers his first ghost, and it's a malevolent being in the form of Lovecraft again. It's just out there to steal him, his soul, and destroy his family. It's a little gory, but a little good too.
Cool, awesome. Then you have this final book that I want to talk a little bit about. It's called Self-Publish Without Spending Money. Talk about it.
All right. Self-Published Without Spending Money is actually born out of my Davenport Writes company. A lot of the questions that were put towards me, I decided to put into the shape of a book. It walks you through the process of basically getting your book from first draft all the way through edits, cover art, and through sales and marketing, and in front of everybody. With Self-Published Without Spending Money, it shows you not just how to do it without spending money, but also how to do it with spending minimal money as well. So if you need cover art, and a lot of the tutorials I put in there aren't really something you're good at, you can there are options to go and pay for really cheap covers that are also very high quality. In the end, cheap or inexpensive does not mean cheap. You can still get published and have a professional made product without spending a dime.
You can do that. We've been talking about those kinds of tips and tricks for, at least 2.5 years now. We've really started focusing in on how to not only create a really cool product, but to be able to get it out there and market it. It's difficult a lot of times for people to decide that they're going to go to the next level after they've finished writing. They feel that, well, damn, that was the hardest part to do. And then they get to the, oh my God, I have this book. How the hell is anyone going to find out what I did? And so people go, oh, Facebook. But that can be an ugly well to fall into. Why?
Exactly. Well, Facebook, a lot of people seem to think social media is a great way to promote things. The problem is you're only promoting to your friends, and you're only getting the knowledge base of what your friends have. Even if you have a page that a lot of people follow, most of those people, at first anyways, are going to be your friends and family.
Right.
In the end, what you need is something broader. And you can get that in Facebook if you can build a team in Facebook, a team that also shares what you share to their friends and family, and then maybe it's a tree. You've got to either build the tree if you're going to use it, or just stop using it altogether.
All right, so I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you right there. Okay. So I've done a lot of marketing classes. I've done a lot of crazy things. But primarily, what happens is you're going to have, because you said that tree, okay, it's going to look like a pyramid or a tree, okay, basic shape of a tree, then you got the trunk. The trunk is all those people that you know already. The tree, the branches, are what comes from those people, your network, who they know, and it just kind of builds off that way. Anyone who thinks that they don't need that for their product, I don't care what kind of product it is mistaken.
No, I agree you need that. My counter to that is that's assuming that those people are going to share and like your stuff. And a lot of the problem that authors find is that they don't. So I go out there and I push this out to my trunk. That doesn't do anything. So you've got to either build the team that's going to share that out there, or you've got to just give up on Facebook and try something different. Insanity, number one rule of sales is insanity is repeating yourself over and over again and expecting different results. And if you keep doing that and it's not changing, try something different.
People tend to get stuck on when they feel that their voice is not being heard, they get frustrated, then they get angry, and then they start to go off the rail. And I've watched this over the last at least 3 years that we've been doing this show, and I find that I've had some of these authors on my show before, and when they're on, they're like positive and they're upbeat and they're excited and all of that. And then months go by, and I watch them put these things, nobody bought a book today, or Facebook sucks, or you suck because I'm not getting sales. You know, it's got to step out of that. It has to go to the next level. Why do you think, in your experience, people don't seek other platforms, or they have to be pushed that way to do it?
There's two reasons, and I'm a pretty firm believer in these. One is persistence is key. The problem is these people think that if they just stop and sit back now that it's out there, or if they say something once in a while on Facebook, something will happen. That's not the case. If you say it on Twitter, something will happen. That's not the case. You've got to keep trying. And it can't be just a once-a-week thing, once-a-month thing, but you also can't spam your people. You've got to pick a different venue every day, or maybe even every hour, and say something in a different venue. So today is Facebook Day. Tomorrow's Twitter Day. Then the next day is Instagram Day. And you have to be persistent. Do that for a month, but then do it for another month. You stop, you've given up. That's the end of it. You can't expect people to just buy your stuff. The other one is that they don't... I kind of lost it. It's basically on the same plan there. You can't expect it to sell itself. You can't. The biggest thing that sells more books is publishing more books. So if you're gonna stop doing anything, at the very least you need to be writing book 2.
Let me ask you something. I heard about 8 months ago that there is a golden ratio when it comes to being able to get your name out and more recognized, and that is creating books from like the 4th to the 5th book that you've done, whether it be a series or just a number of books you've written. It seems to be that golden ratio that you need to do. You got to go 1, 3, 5.
I've heard something similar. It's you have to publish regularly for 4 to 5 years. So, and that's basically the same. You've got to get to book 5 or get to the 5th year of doing persistent work. And if you're not willing to do the persistent work, I mean, I can show the charts. I can show you my own sales. I've done it for a lot of my authors. My first 2 years, first 3, 4 years, nothing. It's been dead. And then after time and building that snowball, I'm finally getting higher sales than I've gotten ever. And that's simply because of persistence and writing and writing and writing. I stink at Twitter. I'm horrible at Facebook. Honestly, I only have Facebook to keep in touch with my family. That's it. And in the end, you've got to be doing something else. So write more. Talk to everyone. Network. Networking is probably the key thing you can do outside of writing another book that sells more. Talk to everyone you can, even if it's just somebody at the subway down the street. Be like, hey, while you're making a sub, you ever checked out my book? Well, I don't care. Fine, but you told somebody else about it.
And somebody in that subway is going to be listening and go, wait a minute, what book? You write?
Exactly.
Have you ever had someone come up to you and say, really, you write this, and you're really good at getting people interested in what you write. Why are you writing this? You could be writing that.
I don't think I have. I think a lot of my fans have agreed that I need to write more horror, but I think the same thing. I need to write more horror. Those scenes in my books, even Sons of Merlin. Sons of Merlin is kind of a young adult book, and one of the best scenes in it is probably one of the scariest. So it's just a matter of I think I need to. I think my audience agrees that when you read my horror books, that's probably the venue I should just stick with.
Talk to me about how you see your genre changed within the last 5 to 10 years, and where do you believe it's going?
I think, so I write, my genre I would describe as horror and fantasy. I do a little bit of both, usually a good mix. I would say horror is coming back into its own. I feel like mid-2000s, it was kind of starting to sag. You weren't seeing a lot of people reading it, or at least talking about it. But now I'm seeing it pick up. I'm seeing a lot of people everywhere I go. Somebody's reading or picking up a horror novel. But at the same time, in removing it from the categories at Barnes & Noble shelves or from whatever other bookstore you go to, I feel like people are seeing horror now as just plain literature that has a scary twist. And that's awesome. So I think we're going to see more of that. I think you're going to pick up a sci-fi novel and you're going to find out it's a horror novel in the end, and that's okay because it's still sci-fi. It can be other things. It's giving another dimension. We're breaking the genre, and that's good.
All right, I want to go into a little bit of the tech side of what you do. You like watching films, right?
I love films.
Yeah, and there's a background to the film. It's called the musical score.
Okay.
And you think about that in terms of pace. Okay?
Okay.
Just as a film needs a musical score for pacing, what do you use, what method do you use to help pacing for your works?
That's actually fun. If you go to simplynoise.com, just go to the website and then just lower your browser. It's just static. So I plug my headphones into my computer, I turn on Simply Noise, and I just write. And that gets me at least 2,000 words a day. I just got to pick an hour and put on Simply Noise.
I love that. Love that. All right, imagery. Okay. You write in different formats, and the imagery is going to be technically and literally different.
Yes.
How do you go about changing up the imagery to be able to fit the genre in which you're working currently?
When I'm writing, I don't think about the genre, even though I know I'm kind of sticking, like Andrew Doran I know is an adventure kind of horror, Trials of Obed Marsh I knew was horror, but when I'm writing I think about, it's more whether or not it's first person or third person really. Andrew Doran's written in a lot of first person, so a lot of what you see is through his eyes. He's not going to sit there and focus on the 8 cracks in the one wall as he comes in. Instead, he's going to focus on how many people are in the room, what they're holding, what they're dressed as, what the general room looks like. It probably was, oh, this used to be a gym. This would be an interpreted journal. So during the book, you'll get some imagery describing basically the cells or what the refinery is like or what living on the boats is like. And that's still, even that ends up being ways of life as opposed to description. But in Sons of Merlin, I was trying very clearly to set up, you want it to be the world of Arthur and the world of Merlin and the knights. So you kind of want to build that imagery based off of things that everybody kind of expects. It really depends on basically first person or third person and what the goal of the story is. And if the goal is something that everybody kind of already knows, you want to at least throw in some imagery just so everybody sees it. But generally, I just put in enough for people's minds to fill in the gaps. And that you see that a lot in my first person novels.
And that's really important. The other thing that's really important is that first paragraph. What is the process for you to start melding yourself into that particular world so that you can get just the right attention to that first paragraph so that we, as a reader, a consumer, can fit right in immediately?
My idea there is to almost always, I actually can't think of a time in which I haven't done it, action sentence. The wind blew, the bookshelf fell over. My first sentence, I don't even worry about the paragraph. I want that first sentence to grab you. So something has to happen. You pick up any one of my books, I guarantee the first paragraph, the first sentence is going to have an action line in it.
Very cool. Listen, people, because I've had some people come on and say, I'm going to write in this particular area, genre, whatever, and I'm going to ignore the tropes because the people, well, they're already going to figure it out, or they're going to add to it, or they're going to whatever. What do you say to people who choose to avoid, almost even on purpose, certain platforms that are designed within particular genres?
I would say specifically, first determine what your goal is. Anytime somebody questions you, well, you seem outside of the trope, or you seem to be breaking from a platform that's specific to your genre, before you answer the question or you address the statement, what is your goal? If your goal is to make money, then what they're saying is correct, because those tropes and genres and platforms exist for a reason. I mean, people go to Sci-Fi Channel because they want to watch a horrible sci-fi movie. You go to these places because you want it. If you're writing because you want to make money, you're doing it wrong if you're breaking platform. If you're writing because you want to enjoy writing and you want to reach a certain number of readers and you just want to write for an audience, but you don't really care what the audience is, but you just want to make sure your work gets out there, break them all. Break every rule you want.
Yes.
It's really dependent on your goal before you answer that question.
All right. You've written a number of books. I want to know what you've learned about yourself in that process of writing and completing finished products.
You can't research enough. Even when you think you've researched everything, research more. Trials of Obed Marsh, I researched that like crazy. I learned everything I could about 18th century or 19th century sailors, about boats, about towns in New England at that time. And then one thing, first review I got, most painful thing, I wrote down that they were all Catholic throughout the whole book. They're not, because New England during the 1900s or 19th century was Protestant. So the good thing about being self-published is I can literally go in, fix it, and there it is, but the review stays up. So research, because even if you've researched all the way to the hills, let like 40 different beta readers, not 39, not 38, 40 beta readers go through it and make sure they're all well-educated, because that's basically it. You can't research enough. You can't. If you're writing, like Andrew Doran, I did tons of research on that, specifically because it's going through Nazi-controlled Germany during the 40s. I wanted to know where we were, what was going on in each area, like Andorra. Nobody knows anything about Andorra. Well, I Googled and I grabbed books from the library. I did everything I could for research on that. You can't research enough. Get your research.
Yes, thank you for that. All right, what has been to date your greatest accomplishment?
Oh, that's marrying my wife.
Cool, good answer.
Right?
Well said.
What
That's
has
who you
been
keep on looking at to the right.
your greatest accomplishment in your writing process?
My greatest accomplishment in my writing process is, I think, when I first understood that writing 2,000 words in a day isn't difficult as long as I want to do it. If I don't want to do it, don't try to force it. Back when I started NaNoWriMo, it was kind of a chore, trying to get churned, trying to figure out what exactly I've got to do to get there, and I didn't think it was possible. I was like, 1,600 words, forget that, man. But it's just like everything else. The first time you ride that bike, you're going to fall a couple times. You're not going to go fast. You're not going to be taking corners, leaning into it, you know. Once you get past the first month or however many hours you need to get good at it, it's just a matter of keeping up with it. I mean, if I try to get on a bike after 10 years of being off a bike, I probably wouldn't be able to do it, but I'd need a little bit more practice to get back to where I was, but it wouldn't take long to get back there. And so, analogies aside, of course, but so with writing, it's the same thing. You just got to keep up with it, give yourself a habit. Once you make it a habit, and that's probably my biggest accomplishment, I would say, personally. I mean, not like a big award or anything, but just saying I know I can because I do.
All right, we're going to go over to Scott Pearson. Go ahead, Scott.
Well, I have a first question for you of when I'm writing, I tend to create my characters to the point where they pretty much self-determine where the story's going to go. Do you do similar?
So what I do when I create characters is I stole this from another podcast I actually listened to. I kind of cast my characters based on actors and characters in movies or books that I really like. And so I do find that if they're a strong enough character, which is my goal, they do end up taking over the story. But with the way I write is I plot it all out in a journal first, and then I sit down and I type it. And so even if they're going to take over the story, I know well before I get to the typing stage.
Okay. When you're do you pull dialogue just in a flow when you're writing it, or do you go through and block out a conversation and fine-tune it in?
It's probably within a flow. Specifically, that's probably the time in which, to connect to your previous question, in which the characters have the most reign to kind of run away with me. I want my conversations to feel like conversations that I would actually have in real life. And in doing that, I want the characters can end up taking over the entire book in that regard. That all of a sudden the conversation goes to a place where I'm like, oh, the only way out is if he says this. Well, now the conversation's going a direction different than what I wanted from the story. So I do write in a flow. I don't just block it out and then drop it in later. It's part of the narrative, but it's also where I can lose control.
All right.
Have you ever had a...
Go. You go.
Okay. Have you ever had a new project spontaneously erupt while you were working on a different one and refuse to leave you alone until you put the one you were working on down to focus on it?
Yes. Right now I'm working on a horror novel I call Satan's Salesman. Essentially, I usually, when I go to signings, I sit across from another author named Catherine Doherty, and she writes a romance novel called She Promised Her Heart. And she's always handing out these shiny pennies and saying, a penny from heaven, a penny from heaven. And when they walk by her, I go, hey, it's better than $1 from the devil. And from that, I've been in the middle of writing a story with my brother for a while now, and I can't let go of this idea of the dollars from the devil. So I'm writing Satan's Salesman at the same time.
I love it. That's I'm writing. I'm doing that writing thing right now. Diablo, $1 from Diablo.
Oh, there you go.
Please, sir, may I have some more, sir? Yes, you may. All right. I know, I'm crazy. That's why I do this. I hang around with zombies and squirrels.
I know, I'm surprised you're still sane.
And then there's Scott.
I'm not a zombie. I just play one so that I can get away without being eaten.
Oh,
Better
that's
safe than sorry.
Now he knows
You
you're
didn't hear that, did you?
Nope.
That's good. All right. So
My
what do you
ears
think?
fell off.
Your ear pillow. Right.
Gorilla glue.
So what was the name of the podcast that you were like, the other podcast that you listened to?
Oh, the one that gave me the idea. I actually listen to self-publishing podcasts. They've got a lot of good ideas from time to time. On,
Self-publishing.
Yep, self-publishing podcast. It
Podcast.
follows Johnny Truant, David Wright, and Sean. Oh, I forgot his last name. But they get a little off topic sometimes, but they follow on things that authors should be asking, like they go everything from how to cast characters when you're writing a story, to the notes you create, to next steps of getting published, getting promoted, that kind of thing. It's a great start for any writer, traditional or indie.
All right. So I'm going to ask you. I know that you probably hadn't heard about this show before we asked you to come on, but if you have, yay. What do you think about the way this platform is and how it would fit into what you're trying to do?
I guess clarify the question. Like, what do you mean, reaching authors, or?
Right.
I think this is genius. Bringing on authors or creators to talk about what they do, but also to outline not only what they do, but make it a discussion. Like, a lot of what we've talked about has been a discussion. I mean, it's an interview too, so I'm filling a lot of gaps. But at the same time, authors need to hear what others are doing. They need to hear me and what was S.K. Ballinger talking about. You're not going to get sales right in the first couple of years. They need to hear. They need to hear that indie publishing isn't necessarily better, but it's different. They need to hear that traditional doesn't give you the best reports. That way they can iron out what they need. Because I mean, if you're an author and you need traditional, or you need regular reporting, and you also need marketing, then probably going traditional isn't for you.
Right.
And now that it's not for you, where do you start? So I would say the platform you're using, doing the Google On Air or the Hangout, and talking to people, having the visual there, shows that we're real people and gets us in front of the right audience.
Do you have any of your books that you can put up so we can see them?
Oh, right here. There we go.
Woo!
Yorn and Trials of Obed Marsh.
I love that.
Rock on.
That's very cool. Very cool. Yes, right. Rock on. All right. Wow. We are at the top of the 1 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time hour. I need you to give me a bumper. Okay, so you're going to say
All right. I've been
your
planning
name?
this.
Your name,
My name.
what you're going to be, your .com or your whatever, and something about Zombiepalooza Radio on YouTube. Go.
All right. My name is Matthew Davenport, and if you want to find me and a lot of what I do, you can go to davenportwrites.com. And as for Zombiepalooza Radio, Zombiepalooza, helping us survive the apocalypse 5 hours at a time.
I like that.
You can have it.
It's so Davenport.
I'll take
All
that
right.
as a compliment.
Yes, please do. All right, so we are at the top of the hour, so I need to get staff to be able to say their final comments and or their goodbyes, and then we're going to ship it over to closing up. Go ahead, Scott Pearson.
Matt, it has been fantastic talking to you today. I'd like to put one thing out towards your marketing. It's a little something I came up with last year called an audiograph for your audiobooks.
Okay.
A recorded 30-second to 1 minute personalized, if they pay like $5 extra or something like that, personalized, hey Jen, hey Scott, thank you for buying my book, type thing, and I call it an audiograph.
I love
just
it.
wanted to put the bug in your ear so that you might be able to put it to use.
I love that idea. I'll figure out how to do it, and I'll make it happen. That's genius.
All right. It has been fantastic
It's been a pleasure.
listening
Pleasure
to
meeting
this
you, Scott.
today. Look forward to hearing you come back.
Thank you.
All right, we're going over to Double D, Dead Door.
Me for
Oh, I'm
double
sorry.
D closes it.
I'm sorry. Crunchy.
Poor Crunchy.
I know.
She is just nutty tonight. Thank you, Matt, for coming by. Yeah. Thank you, Matt, for coming by. Awesome interview.
Thank you very much, Crunchy.
I know, right? I love him.
No, it's
He's
me.
awesome. On whose part? Let me think about that. All right,
Fine.
go ahead. He's gonna put those two. They argue so much.
Oh, I believe
I
it.
don't understand
Yeah, we
how
do.
they do this thing, but you know, and Crunchy, he did get a raise. He's chief engineer of Zombiepalooza Radio. So, and I gotta get his page changed up to reflect that. But yeah. Also, before we go directly to Dead Door, please, if you haven't, subscribe to the channel, because that's how we get more and more people to see what we're doing here on this crazy show.
That's
and,
the treat.
You know, that's right. It's the treat.
You got a network.
That's right. All right. Go ahead, DD.
Make sure you like, subscribe, and share to Zombiepalooza Radio Live on YouTube. Matt, thank you so much for coming by. Awesome interview.
Pleasure meeting you, Double D. Thank you so much.
Yeah, definitely. And for the other authors on tonight, everybody, y'all have a good night, a good morning, and a good evening.
That's all, folks.
Thank you guys in chat. Good night.
Hashtag.